Hey, Jim. Hey, Gary. Yep, it's a bit awkward, but yeah, I know I am live. Thank you. For some reason I'm not seeing. There we go. 10 book. There we go. What's going on, Andrew? Brian, how's everyone doing? The feedback from the last one of these was that everyone kind of liked it. I had in my head this idea that we would all be able to, have video sharing together, and that ends up being really difficult. A fellow friend of the channel, Tom Zalikman, had that Blackboard beta software. He doesn't work there anymore, and I'm not sure whatever happened to that. But folks seem to like this, so the fact that the chat seems to stay pretty on topic, which makes it work for my end. I've got a couple things I was going to run through, an update on what's going on our side, but really just wanted to say hi to everybody and see if you guys had questions about the usual stuff, whether it's Fusion or entrepreneurship or business or the shop or products or advice or anything of the sort. So by all means, ask away. We, if anybody watched the thermal printer, I love that the thermal printer that we custom built. It works, it really does. But the workflow of the memo bird, we put the page up on it, which is I've got enough USB cord here to hold it up or not. I can move my camera carefully here. This little guy is I think it's like $60, and it is worth it because it just turnkey. You just hook it up with if this then that, and it just works immediately. The only quirky thing is you've got to buy a specific version of it on Amazon. It's actually a funny way that Amazon works. If you post a product to sell on Amazon, as long as somebody else has the identical product, they can hijack your listing and offer it at whatever price that they want. So that doesn't work with something truly custom, but if it's frustrating because it can be very confused about which version you're buying and making sure you get the one that you want. Would you consider making a video about how you clean your Torbox? So you must have some time-saving tips. Okay, so next week's Wednesday widget is going to be on a dust shoe. You guys saw it. I don't think it was in a widget yet. I think we threw something up on Instagram, but we bought a Harbor Freight dust collection. It's so much more powerful than a shop vac. Although side fact, we bought one of the dust deputies from, I think it was from Amazon, but that you hook up to your shop vac that makes that cyclone effect. Oh my God. I'd heard great things about them, and it was one of those $100 purchases I just felt like was a way to push off. Today's been one of those growth eats cash for breakfast days. And the cyclone is amazing. The filter is just spotless clean. So that makes me happier to use the vacuum, the shop vac to vacuum out chips. So in terms of cleaning, Jim, yes, we can definitely do something on that. I probably do have some points. Keeping a foxtail brush or just one of those little brushes next to your machine, I find really helps. Sweep the accordion ways off. That really helps those last, because when they crunch together with chips in it, that's when they start to break down, wear down, or get holes cut into them. And then depending on which machine you've got, like the 770s have kind of a nice chip trough. We keep the dustpans nearby, brush chips into there, get them out of the machine, vacuum them out. Trying to do less about air. Somebody was just asking on the NYC CNC forum today about cleaning out vices that are getting sticky. They do. And some of that's because when a chip gets into a a screw, regardless of the quality of the vise. You just have to get that out. So that is a good thing to take apart. And that's probably another decent video, is just taking apart a vise and cleaning them. And where we add some rust preventatives like the LPS3 or what's the other stuff? Not WD-40, lanolin. It's like more like a toothpaste or a grease that kind of stays on longer. And yeah, we have, well, yeah, we'll make a note. Let me write that down. Cleaning machines. Any specific questions, Jim, that I'm not thinking of or that you were thinking of on the workflow? I'll wait to see what you say. We love the 770s too. I was just talking about that. My gosh, I almost feel silly for liking the 1100 so long. Don't get me wrong. The 1100 is great. More work envelope, more rigidity. It's the bread and butter. But man, that 10,000 RPM spindle is just, we use it all the time in aluminum now. So that's cool. Thank you for the TIE Fighter comments. That was a fun video. That actually, the genesis of that was, I was hoping, shockingly, to try to do it as a lathe video, or most of it as a lathe video, where we would actually keep the TIE Fighter out of one piece of round bar and use a grooving tool to kind of show what a fun project it could be with one machine and one tool to cut everything away. And then you have to move it over to the mill to cut away the hex pattern of the wings themselves. Ends up that it would have required quite a long grooving tool, which we have, like a parting tool, but not with the corner rad. So I realized, you know what, this will be a better video if you separate it out into the 3 parts, but I thought it was kind of fun. Okay, selling a 770, curious how much useful life is left, 1 to 2,000 hours. What would you recommend to check its status? So this is actually a great question. I asked Tormach this, and they require, good question, Kent. I'll get right back to that. Tormach requires a lot of their manufacturing partners to use Tormach machines as like a way to force them, or, a way for them to make sure that they're part of the team. So the examples that I know of there are the fellow that runs the company in Texas that builds and designs the automatic tool changers. A lot of those parts are actually built on Tormach machines that they own and run in their factory. And then overseas, I know there's a Tormach. It may just be the casting. I don't know that they're running like Path Pilot and the Tormach motion control, but it's nevertheless the cast iron with the turkite and the ground screws and so forth. And one of the Tormach engineers was joking that machine, the one in China or wherever it is, has been run like way more than any other Tormach. So my understanding from a true machine building perspective is that the first thing that would go would be the turkite, which is very much replaceable. Not something we hear about in the Tormach world because no Tormach is even close to that old. It is something you see in the machine rebuilding or the Richard King world, or the people that are buying, 40-year-old good iron type of machines. So the short answer is it hasn't worn out. There's like no chance, especially a 770. The oldest it could be is what, 7 years old, even if it were run 40 hours a week. Now it could be abused. And so if I were walking up to a machine, I want to look for overall condition. So clean the thing up or keep it clean. I'm going to look for how the gibs feel. Now those could be adjusted, but nevertheless, just getting an idea for what those are like. Spindle, how the R8 drawbar feels and releases, and looking at that. But again, you can replace the spindle for $500. I'm trying to think what else. But to answer your question, useful life left in it is, I don't know how to answer that question, because to date, and I'm sure the trolls and on some forum would love to tear into this, but to date, I don't know of anyone that's properly worn out a Tormach. Actually, the machine is worn out. It just doesn't happen. It's, for me, one of the most educational things was I've taken 2 of those Richard King scraping classes where he talks about, everything is a consumable. Everything is or not rigid. Everything is flexible. Like even, $1 million grob machines have flex in them, and things get fixed and so forth. So kind of a not a big deal scenario. Woo, fourth out backlash in Z is something's wrong there for sure. Check. You could have a loose screw in your ball nut. So let's talk about that real quick, folks. We did a video on Tormach maintenance, and go watch that. But you can check this and isolate this down pretty quickly by figuring out where you're getting a lot of that fourth thou. Is it the head knot or gib? Is it over tight? Or do you have some angular contact bearing looseness? Putting indicators in some different spots, and we talk about it in that video, can help you. That would be a red flag for me, just because it shouldn't be that bad. Let me scroll back up to get to some other questions. Keep them coming though, folks. Kent, I know you love lathes, but any advice on where to start with tooling? I've got a new machine coming soon. I'm feeling overwhelmed with the Sandvik catalog. Yeah, no, this is a great question. And again, most of my hate of lathes is really just a joke. But part of the reason I don't like lathes is they're so much more complicated. I would find somebody who you can try to build a good relationship. If I recall, Kent, you're in the Northwest, but Sandvik, first of all, it seems to make some of the best tools out there, or that's a pretty popular sentiment. But also, I really like my Sandvik rep. I actually just found out he may get reassigned, which would be a huge bummer. But the reality is, any modern turning center can be run quite well with Sandvik, Seco, Iskar, Kennametal, and everybody has certain things they're really, really good at. But start simple. If you have a specific product you need to make or work on, use that with a tooling engineer to buy just the tools you need, and just do that. Don't go overboard. Lots of people are using W inserts because you get 3 sides per side, 6 cutting edges per insert. You can't get quite as close to shoulders. And I think a C insert, you can push a little harder. But you need a general OD turning tool. And then ID stuff tends to be more specific to the size and diameter. A really good parting tool. We love that Sandvik 2mm button tool, the one we actually used in the TIE Fighter video. But don't get overwhelmed. Just buy what you need and know you can build out from there. So that would be my advice. Okay, I'm gonna machine came with a 3K Sandvik certificate, but I'm still starting with shards until I know what I need. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that, Kent. Your Sandvik cert should last for 6 months or a year, and aren't you buying an Okuma lathe? First of all, to be clear, shards actually does make some really decent stuff, but you're going to end up buying stuff twice. It's a pretty no-brainer to buy a couple of basic tools. Here's the other thing, and this is going to throw a little bit of a loop at you, but Sandvik's prime turning, number one, is the real deal. Everyone I've heard that's touched that is saying phenomenal things. And number two, Fusion supports it, which is a huge thing as well. I don't want to get off topic or too down that rabbit hole, and I don't have any firsthand experience with it, but I would probably not do the shards thing and really go with the right stuff. The other thing too is, build a relationship. Most of those tooling companies should let you, it's a little awkward, bring things in on test. Basically, there is the opportunity for you to get it in your shop, use it, make sure it's doing what you want before you have to commit to buying it. You've just got to be upfront with them. I've had some awkward conversations where I felt like they told us it was a free to test, and then we were like, well, that doesn't do what we thought. And they're like, well, if you weren't sure you were going to reject it, we really should have pulled it out of trunk stock and not this. And I was kind of like, I didn't mean to do that, but email me or ask again if you want to follow up on that. Okay, so Nick is asking, how do you keep from burning out? I'm not sure I have a good answer I don't have a one fell swoop sort of answer. I think number one is acknowledging it. And my experience is when you're finally able and willing to admit it, you're probably already past sort of that point. For us this year, we've done 2 major things. We've really focused in, and by that I mean we've turned off or cut off a lot of other stuff. No more job shop work. We shut down a little Rimfire Steel. We aren't making the Bridgeport products. We've shut down some other little stuff. And the other thing that we've done is we've really grown in payroll and people around here and their own responsibilities. I'm actually pretty happy and proud that we've gotten a lot of folks doing a lot more independently. And actually, it's really not disruptive. Like I'm taking tomorrow off to go on a zoo field trip with William, and it's not a big deal. Like I don't even really have to tell people I'm not going to be here. Parts will get made, things will get shipped. But with that being said, I think it wasn't until that stuff fell into place that I kind of realized, wow, I was grinding pretty darn hard. And it works a pretty long time when you love what you do, but if your business is profitable enough, where it gets really tough is if you've got a really fast growing business and you're in a place where you can't hire people. So folks that are running successful businesses out of their garages and they can't bring on employees, or Grimsmo's kind of out of space for machines and people. Those are really tough situations. Otherwise, you've got to get people on board to help you, interns, full-time employees, consultants, Upwork type stuff. And you've got to here's the thing. I will often work just as hard and feel better about it if I know I don't have to. In other words, if I know, oh man, I've got to fill 3 orders, or I've got to do this video, or I've got to do something else, that being backed into a corner is kind of what burns me out. If I don't have to do it, someone else could do it, or it'll happen either way. Then a lot of times I get that energy back. You don't feel as obligated, if that makes sense. Jim was saying, I'm sorry, I may be a little bit behind here on some of these comments. Jim was saying, I was hoping you had some tips. I'm using the fixture plate and mod vices. Love how the profile are. They clean up great. Awesome. You can clean up the paint job on that Tormach 2, Jeff. That may be worth it. It depends. I wish you would make some individual rubber plugs to install between the vices. So the point of the fixture plate covers was they're cheap enough where you could cut them up. We got quotes for plugs. The cheapest that we could get, our cost was going to be like 30 some cents a pop. And any business person will tell you have to make a markup. But even if we did that to almost no dollars, the cost of the plugs was going to be very expensive. And we have plugs, and we have plugs for our old plate and some other things, and I hate them. They're a pain in the butt. So we better off, we find strips, rubber, plexiglass, acrylic in the shop vac. Joseph Klein, are you using both way adaptive? I just uploaded the Wednesday widget for next Wednesday, which is both ways adaptive. I'll give you guys a little bit of the spoiler preview. We did use it, worked quite well on both aluminum, and we tried it on some 4140. Actually, this was with the Tormach 770. It works great for long open contours. So long open pockets when you're going all the way over, long open contours, not pockets. So if you're going all the way along a part to adaptive it out, it doesn't save you much time on pockets or on small areas. And it can actually even be slower. So frankly, it's for us probably gonna have pretty limited applications or uses, but still a cool thing. That's right, Ken, LA area. Plenty of industry around you for sure. Let's see here. Make sure if I missed something, folks, I'm trying to read through the comments here. Let me know. Sorry. Suggestion for changing vice jaws. We've converted a cordless ratchet. Yeah, we use the DeWalt's to change pull the socket cap screws out. That's great. Please don't use any sort of drill or impact on your actual vice screw. That's really, really bad. Yeah, good advice, Nick. Talk to your tool distributors, find somebody else who has a machine, get some opinions. Again, it's really, again, not to say that certain companies aren't more expensive or better or different, but it comes down to the relationship with the person who can help you out, who's a good person, who wants your business. We've got a really nice tooling rep who doesn't know anything, and that's tough because he's a nice guy, but worthless, just doesn't have any real knowledge. Any insights into the 1100M? I've seen claims that it's just a rebranding. Is it really Series 4? The stand looks significantly different at a minimum. So we just found out more than everyone else knows, and we can't say anything. Sorry. The good news is the photo that leaked, which I definitely feels like is fair game to talk about, was on the scenes of BattleBots, and I'm pretty sure BattleBots airs pretty soon, like within the next month or something. So I don't know timing, but I don't quote me on this. I don't think the timing is like a year out or even 6 months out. Can you do a video at some point on bare minimal required end mills? MacGyver X, yes. In fact, I might come back to that in this video, talking about tooling for machining and getting started. Yeah, no, awesome, Nick, that you've got help even in the form of your wife. It is not a joke. I mean, my wife literally used to, I could never get her in the shop or to run the machine, but she used to package up our stuff. We actually used to, oh, sorry. I was about to say, we published a video. It's only on, well, it's on NYCCNC.com, but it's public video. It's not even behind the paywall on our story. And it was like on a 20-minute version. We went into a lot deeper backstory to how we got to where we are than I've ever been willing to share in the past. So if you guys want to hear more about that, and it kind of ties into the organic growth, and we never said we were starting a machine shop. We never said we were going to do something. You just kind of grow into it. I'm scrolling up to see. I thought I missed one comment. Oh, maybe not. Yeah. If someone were to have asked me my opinion, there's a number of things that are exciting about things that I think that could be done better on a Tormach. And it's always tough because I'm very happy with the machines and certainly where they've gotten us and what they've done and their capability for the price. But yeah, a better stand, one that is a little bit easier to install and looks better and has better doors is a pretty common request. What else you guys got? Fingers crossed for linear rails. So I'm saying this as my own personal opinion. I asked people who are kind of in the know on that stuff, and I'd love to be wrong. I'll put it that way, but I think Tormach, to their credit, it's not easy to do what they do. It really isn't. The more I learn about manufacturing at that level and so forth, it's difficult. They're a casting company in a scraped dovetailed ways kind of company. So it's interesting. I think the biggest noise I've heard is the Automate CNC, which is, from what I've heard on hearsay, is Smithy in the U.S. importing existing machines. Those machines already existed. They're just putting their name on them. And then it's got a Siemens European control or something quirky. I am glad to see more people are using them. I would still have long-term concerns over the infrastructures, the support, spare parts, reliability, and so forth. And that's not to say I'm rooting against them. It's the same thing why I have concerns. I got really interested in Samsung lathes. I mean, Samsung lathes, they built lathes for Morisiki. That's a very formidable company, very strong global existence, but they're a little bit newer to the US. I'll put it this way. I asked somebody in Kent, actually somebody in the LA area who was shopping for a lathe. I said, why did you buy a Doosan and not a Samsung or a Haas? And they liked some features on the Doosan. They liked the price, but really they were all kind of similar. The difference was there were like, 2 Samsungs, 25 Haas's, and 250 Doosans in the area. Guess who's going to have more support and spare parts? Any updates on the new content for Speeds and Feeds? So that's the thing we're working on. And I'm going to actually sit on it a little bit longer. I haven't decided how big it's going to be. shockingly, it may be something that goes bigger than just us. So let me come back to that in a second. I want to see these comments. For sure, Tormach's not a job I'd like to handle from an engineering standpoint. I'd have a hard time getting my knives to turn out right. Yeah. Do I use Fusion Production? I do not, and my very limited interaction with it, I felt like it was, I was not impressed. It's quite expensive. It doesn't actually have a very good tight integration with Fusion. So Fusion Production is a form of a job runner. So you're able to take a Fusion 360. It's a little bit frustrating because frankly, they shouldn't even share the names because they really are disconnected, at least at this point. The idea is you in a machine, a shop with multiple employees or multiple machines, multiple product lines, you could use Fusion Production as a job runner. So you could have tracking where they are, what machine they should be run on, what order they should be run on. You could tie in different data sheets, QC sheets, going paperless with an iPad. It's a common thing that's been done. Watch our video on the S&H Machine Shop Tour. They wrote their own in the Apple database software, FileMaker Pro. I'm not saying that's a good answer, but for most shops at least. But going to runners are a common thing. We don't use them, but I could see us kind of starting to. But I was not impressed with Fusion Production. Whoa, awesome. Lucid has an Automate lathe. First one was a piece of junk, but they made it right and gave me a different machine. Well, so tell us, I'd love to hear honest feedback about, I really thought hard on getting a Samsung, but the support for Tucson was a lot better and their nationwide support is so much greater. Yeah. That's the hurdle a company like Samsung has. Again, on the flip side, I want to give a shout out. Every person I've talked to that owns a Samsung lathe, and oddly, I think everyone I've talked to, which is really only like 3 or 4 people, are the people who wrote the checks for it, which are the people who usually have good feedback because they know if it's making the money or if it's reliable and so forth. My point is that sometimes operators will always find quirky bad things, and that can be good feedback too. But I tend to appreciate listening to who's making the decisions on the capital and machine tool side. Everyone loves them, including that video with Triton Aerospace. He bought the I don't know, $50,000 or $60,000 kind of stripped down bare bones Samsung lathe, and holding very tight tolerances on material like stainless and Inconel. Greg, we'll come back to that question about payroll. What user new 10 horsepower max lathe would you buy if you wanted something bigger than your Slant Pro, but were power limited? So I am kind of thinking about this right now. And so the obvious answer, to be honest, is Haas. I have a relationship with Haas. Like I know the people there. We've been super happy with our VM3 and our VF2. And the controller, having the same controller is a huge deal, especially given that a lot of the other common lathe choices, Samsung and Doosan, are Fanucs. Now, we would be doing so much less on the lathe and so much more from Fusion side, meaning less at the control, where I feel like maybe the fact that it's a Fanuc control isn't as big of a deal because we're just posting code to it. But I would look at Samsung, Doosan, Haas, and I'm going to Chicago next week for a DMG Mori event. I mean, Mori's a phenomenal lathe brand, as is Okuma. They're a lot more expensive. I'm not sure for what we're doing I could justify the additional price. Haas lathes just leave a little bit to be desired from what I've heard. They're still great, don't get me wrong, but Jay Pearson is a great example. Loves Haas, has a ton of Haas mills, buy new Haas mills, Doosan lathes. Sorry, Nick, I'm not following your question. It may just be because I'm bouncing around here. You're saying you're looking for a good solution. You've tried Asana, Trello, and Sightly, but nothing to do everything. Remind me what you're trying to do here. And Greg, I don't want to forget about you. But one last thing, tight tolerance fault. Let me go back in order here. My Automate now is one of their ZMAT made machines. Huh. Oh, Fusion Production. Thank you. Got it. Yeah. None of those software. are going to do what production would do. So I guess they're a new factory now. Am I wrong then, Lucid, on my understanding or what I'd heard, which is dangerous to believe sometimes, is that Smithy or Automate has nothing to do with that machine. It's literally a machine that is off the shelf in Asia. You can kind of flip through a catalog, pick it out, just slap your name on it. Maybe that's not true. Okay, let me go back up here. Greg asks, can you talk about how one decides how much to pay yourself per hour, per week, or a percentage? So I'm going to assume this is in the context of, being a small self-employed person. I mean, how much you pay yourself is a little bit, there's a fancy term of money is fungible. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you pay yourself. It's the same amount of money. I just started paying myself this year. The IRS will eventually kind of make you pay yourself if you're profitable. And if you're not profitable, they'll question the validity of your business. Big picture, talk to an accountant or a lawyer. This is stuff that gets over my head, but you can't run a super profitable company and not pay yourself. Nor can you just lose money into perpetuity forever. But so I didn't pay myself because we reinvested the money into the business, and my wife has a job, so we use that to cover the household expenses. It is not tax efficient to pay yourself. So when I say that, I mean when you pay yourself, you have to pay FICA and so forth. So what successful people will do that have companies where they wouldn't raise their salary. Let's say you make $250,000 a year, 1 year, you have a banner year or something, you would pay yourself your normal salary and the rest would be handled via like a distribution. So really how much you pay yourself is, for me as an entrepreneur, how much I need. I don't do a lot outside of the business. Most of my travels for work. So that's one kind of why we could get by without paying myself too much, but that's how I would think about it. Chime in if I'm not answering the question though, or what you were trying to get at. Any tips on tight tolerances and small holes? Burnishing. Okay, so burnishing in our experience doesn't really help. You really can't move the hole size more than a couple of tenths, and burnishing is great for surface finish or smoothness or concentricity, but not, in my experience, for moving really more than a few tenths. We spent a lot of time trying to figure that as a workflow out for the fixture plates, where we would run a boring cycle. We would run that boring cycle rough or fast with a sharp radius insert to create peaks and valleys. And then we would cold flow burnish those out to a nominal final size. They just don't work like that. So tight tolerances and small holes depends on the material, but you're going to want to go with, for 1/8 inch carbide reamers is the best thing I got for you, or moving to a honing solution. Mm-hmm. Hey, Roy. Roy's teaching the TIG class here next week. They just spec out some of the options they want, have the parts on hand to support them, but you could go on Alibaba and order the same machine as Smithy is doing. Yeah. Nick, I hear you on sometimes feeling like you're using a ton of software. The best piece of advice I could give you when you feel like you're doing too many things and bouncing around is a process. We've really focused a lot on that here. And instead of me having to use my brain power and actually making decisions about, okay, now I need to go from quote to Fusion, or Fusion to my accounting software, or accounting software to shipping software, is create a process. Because then instead of me having to think, I can just react to a pre-existing process. Even if that looks crummy, like it bounces around or is kind of weird, do that. Honing is not a grinding service. Look up, actually, I'll just type it in the comments. Google Sonnen Hone. So Hone is the best way. Like AB Tools makes tool holder extensions that are super dialed in on concentricity and size. Those are all honed in. So it's an abrasive process. I don't think it's technically grinding, but it has a fluid over a lap. I guess it would be a better. Can someone chime in on the comments? What is the difference between lapping and honing? I can't answer that correctly off the top of my head. But hones are how you would get really, really accurate, consistent small diameter holes. And you could, I'm trying to think if you could probably figure out a way to get a hone in a, I don't know if you could hone in a vertical machining center or not. Okay, so maybe that's the difference. A hone uses a stone, so whereas a lap is just a piece of material in which you impregnate with sort of third-party abrasive. The hone itself is the stone. Oh, so Gary's mentioning that honing takes more material than lapping. So maybe lapping is even better. I see honing a lot in production of holes and stuff. I don't see lapping. It's been cool to see if you guys follow the podcast. Grimsmo, I don't know if he bought it yet, but I'm pretty sure he's, mentally pulled the trigger, preparatory purchase on his lapping machine for in-house lapping. Lapping is a solid piece of material. Hones tend to be flexible. Oh, okay, that's a good point. Oh, Jeff, there's another thing. Probably not what you're. It depends on how much material you need to remove. But Google Flex Hone, they make small to big hones. So they looks like a cylindrical wire brush like you would use to scrub a gun bore. But instead of being just a wire cylindrical brush, the end of every lead has a ball, like a little sanding ball on it. They're pretty cool. And you could totally throw one of those into a tool holder and actually run it up and down inside of a hole. And I don't know, those will not stop. Like it would just keep honing to the extent that there's outward pressure on those balls. So I don't know if it would work for the workflow. Yeah. Renzetti or Lipton would be a great commenting on that. Oh my God. Yeah, I would love a prepper. Actually, Roy Crumrine is on this. I think, Roy, I hope it was you. I'm tired. Sorry. Roy made us a preparatory purchase t-shirt. We totally should do it. You know what? I'll be honest. Would I love them? Yes. A great example of something where I've just started to say no because I love saying yes to that, but then it's all those little things that end up distracting from. It sounds crummy. Maybe there's a life lesson here buried somewhere, but that stuff tends to add to the distraction because then you got to do shirt size and ordering and who's inventorying them and how do they happen. And saying no to things like that is a kind of a bummer, but it's also leads to a less stressful life. Oh, wow. 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch blind hole. That's a tricky one. Yeah. You could definitely have a boring bar with a custom ground micro 100 tool. That's going to be your best bet. That should be able to hold, I don't know, 3 or 4 tenths pretty easily. Depending on the material will dictate how quickly that tool wears or wears out. But I guess that would be my go-to. Anybody else have any other suggestions? Yeah, thank you, Roy, for the preparatory. I can't even talk now. Yeah, I mean, titanium isn't the end of the world. Yeah, Gary, we do. I use T Blaster, I think it is, or T Spring as well. But I'm going to sound like I'm a curmudgeon, but someone's got to design it. Grimsmo and I've got to do it together because it's a joint thing, and it's just, yes, I would love to, but takes work. It's kind of cool that Roy Crumrine if you guys don't know Roy, he does the welding tips and tricks podcast with Jody Collier and Jonathan Lewis. And it's kind of funny to see we've got a welder here on the machining channel. We gonna let him stay? Oh yeah, flap disc. That'd be a nice idea too. I would talk to Jeff. If you work with a tooling supplier or tooling vendor, ask them. You might be surprised at what they come up with. Seth Medor from Liberty Machine showed me some 3M flap disky things. Grimsville actually just got them too. They're not going to work for what you're talking about, but it was a good example of I had no idea that even existed. Or maybe there's something like a carbide burr. I'm guessing, Jeff, you're interpolating them on a Tormach, and that's not an acceptable. There's obviously some concentricity error on a Tormach machine as you interpolate a circle. I'm guessing if that's what you're trying to get away from, then yeah, boring bar is probably your best bet. Oh, a Speedio ought to be able to interpolate really tight tolerances. You can't do it with spring passes and a finishing end mill. 1/8 by 1/8 inch hole. Even reaming that, boy, reamer would have such a leading edge, though. I would almost wonder. Yeah. Yeah, machinists need heroes to save those crash parts. I'm still chewing on this one. A Speedio. Well, can you time in? What sort of tolerances are you trying to hit, and what are you getting to with interpolation or what you were saying? How you make them on the Speedio? Yeah, 3 to 3/10 is not that crazy. 4/10. I mean, not easy, but shouldn't be that crazy. Can you recommend where to go for custom extrusion? Jim, are you talking about getting aluminum extrusion made? I'm gonna pop aluminum extrusion. This is gonna go way back. Jim, I can. I don't even know how I would find. No, it would be an email I don't have access to anymore. Back in the strike mark days, we got a quote from a company. You're not going to get a short run of like 500 feet. My limited experience of getting a quote was this was for those GoPro mounts that we made, and the price was very attractive, but we basically had to buy about a mile of the material, so about 10 times more feet than you're interested in purchasing. And in that case, they absorb or amortize the cost of the tooling into the quote for the material, and it was great. But I don't think you're going to find very interesting results for a short run of 500 feet. Yeah, I trying to think. I had a guy in New Jersey who was a friend of a college friend who's worked at an aluminum company. I asked him, and he actually knew somebody, but I can't think of who that would be anymore. Yeah, Eric raises a great point. I mean, we do use when we interpolate holes, we are using diameter cutter comp for sure. And you've also got to just be conscious of the chip thinning effect as well as when you're taking those tiny cuts, you're going to potentially rub or burnish, and that might be okay. You honestly might call up a high-end tooling company like the folks at Helical or Harvey and just tell them you're basically burnishing. And someone was just telling me that they have some burnishing tools that are more designed for it. I mean, don't laugh. It could be something as crazy as taking a dedicated end mill and running it backward. You're going to generate some heat. And I'm completely making this up right now, but there could be some idea like that. My point is that I would think the Speedio can hold the tolerance. So it's really a question of your stack up of your tool, concentricity, run out, wear, holder, coolant, all that stuff. Gary, oh, awesome. Lead, Himmel in Connecticut, use them for special choosing and ran under 500 feet. That's awesome. Gary, thank you for sharing that. I am actually going to make that, copy that in a note. Yeah, one last thing, Jeff. Toolpath style makes a big difference. If you are able to do it with a toolpath like a boring op, you're going to wear your tools out more quickly because you're going to be cutting more with the leading edge of the tool, but you're also going to be transferring the load from being purely radial to radial and axial or more axial. And that's going to massively minimize material and tooling deflection. So worth a shot on that front. I got to run in a few minutes because I have to be home for 6 with the kids. But I'll stick around here for a few more. Folks have more questions or comments. This is fun. This is cool. I'm glad that people are helping out each other out here on these kind of questions. The other question too is how are you measuring the 3 to 4 tenths tolerance? That's a pretty tough measure without, dowel pins that short. It'd be so easy to get an incorrect reading. And don't take for granted the tolerance or variance in the pins themselves. Shrinker should work. If you don't have a shrink machine, that's no good. But hydraulic, hydraulic could actually be good for your run out. Measure your run out too, for sure. Oh, sorry. The minimal end mill for starting out. Sorry, I was answering that in terms of a project we're working on more big time. I mean, if you depends on your machine, your materials, what you're trying to make. For most people, it's typical caveats of generalizations, but for someone starting out with a Tormach, you can make a ton of parts with a Superfly to face something off, a shear hog to do roughing in aluminum, and then a normal quarter-inch end mill, so a square-shouldered end mill can do almost all of your kind of finishing work, 2D work. Now, obvious caveats, you'll need smaller diameter tools to get into smaller areas. You'll need chamfer tools, drills, and so forth. But really, for a lot of the parts that you see, like we make on the widgets and so forth, your face mill, Superfly, shear hog, and quarter-inch tool will really get you running. Tormach 440. Those are the 3 I would buy for sure. Oh, good, Kent. Awesome. Glad to hear you're enjoying it. I got to throw this out since we've been talking so much about Jeff's hole pin stuff. Deltronics. We bought all their gauge pins for our fixture plates. Oh my gosh, we buy them in 1/10,000th of an inch increments. They're like $11 each. They're considered the best. That was like one of those really fun wins where it wasn't even that expensive. Gary asks, what kind of battery life are you getting on your Renishaw? Does the zero start moving or does it stop working? We don't know because we throw them out every 6 months and replace them. I'm told they can last up to twice as long. It's like $6 to replace the batteries. They do take brand specific batteries, or more importantly, there are certain brands of the same size that they won't work with. But we just, every 6 months, we throw them out, and peace of mind. Thoughts on the new Tormach Auto bandsaw? I would totally buy one if I wanted a bandsaw. We still need a bandsaw for the miscellaneous stuff, but we order everything saw cut. And somebody needed to make an automatic bandsaw, and so I'm glad Tormach is doing it. That's an absolute awesome product. To me, though, when I think about my business right now, bandsaw blades are still pretty easy to bugger up and expensive. People tend to not want to change the bandsaw feed for the right material or the thickness, and it's an operator, and it takes time, and it's so cheap to have material saw cut. stops working, the probing routine errors out. They last about 8 months. There you go. So 6 months they get pulled. That goes back to the memo bird. So that's the whole idea of the thermal project, was to stop thinking about maintenance and reacting to maintenance. So the fact that right now this isn't like finished setup for everything yet, but every 6 months a paper magically appears and says replace the Renishaw batteries. To me, that's so much better than a calendar reminder that you can snooze, you could ignore, you could miss, the wrong person's in, out. Yes. Cool. Glad to hear everyone enjoyed. So I'll wrap up with the speeds and feeds thing, which is more to come. We're thinking about something pretty big, hopefully bigger than us. NYC CNC has very much been around our story, and Saunders Machine Works is inevitably a little bit about our story and our relationship with how we got started to use Tormach and those products. And I love both those things, but I want something I think we're onto something that could be pretty big here. I've been pretty knee deep in working on that. It's been actually pretty fun to go back to the drawing board of Business Basics 101 and Entrepreneurship 101 and how to get started. So I filmed a video. Julie has not edited it yet. It probably will be a pro video on NYC that kind of walks through like 6 or 7 different tools we're using to fail fast, fail cheap, to flush out ideas, to start thinking about the value that you're adding. How do you execute on that quickly? So you guys will be the first to know, but I'm going to sit on it a little for now. Bought your DeWalt saw fixture. Hey, thanks, Jim. Appreciate the purchase. What do you think about the Glowforge? I don't know. The bad stuff I heard about the Glowforge was the delays, but seems pretty awesome. Only one I ever saw was that Triton Aerospace. The interface and software looks great. It's a low-cost laser. I've got nothing bad to say. Can you, hey, Greg, clarify, can you do a video on your toolbox layout? You mean our actual like physical tool carts? Am I happy with the Mitsui height gauge? Just picked up a surface plate. Yes, that thing is amazing. It's used all the time. And I think Jared is probably the best fan of it because at first he was not so sure, and we now love it. It is accurate as snot. Easy to use. It's not a CMM, to be clear, and boy, it would be nice to have one, but they're about 10 times the price. So that is something I would sell a lot of things before I sell that thing. I'll put it that way. Awesome. Thanks, Guy, for mentioning the site. I'm so glad that folks love the NYC site. That's like been I didn't know I needed that until I needed it, and now it gives us a way to put stuff there. So please, folks, use that. Yes, we did. One of the titanium blocks was in the mill. We're doing some speeds and feeds on that, and then maybe one of them is going to try to get turned into a Millennium Falcon. We'll see. I'm going to wait for Greg to respond, hopefully on toolbox layout. I'll just take a guess at what he's asking, which is Kaizen foam in each drawer. Yeah. So interesting comment. If anyone has ever been in the military, which I was not, or in scenarios like EMTs, they're very deliberate about the organization, the consistency. And I'm finding that I originally thought it would be okay to have different layouts at different machines because of the employees or the machine. But man, I hate it when the scissors are a different spot or the calipers are at a different spot. So I'm thinking about forcing a top drawer standardization. Otherwise, it hasn't changed a ton. So I'm not sure I've got a video's worth update, but if you guys want even like a private Patreon NYC video of just kind of what we're up to lately, can there be an option to flag? Oh, that's a good idea. Flag watched videos. I'm writing that down, Joe. There might not be because of the way the database works, but I'll look at it. I'm going to try to move my camera right now to show my office desk, which I did just redo. the Kaizen foam on maybe a month ago. And this, I had this on for maybe 2 years. Sorry, I'm going to try to hold the camera still. I just redid it and I love it. So big differences were things I use all the time: pen, Sharpie, Mitutoyo gauge, calipers. I use my stapler a ton, the scissors. And then the rest of the stuff, frankly, I don't use all that much, but I like having access to it without having to open the drawers. Getting some thumbsticks, Q-tips, toothpicks, and paper clips up here was a good decision. I've got tweezers for, stuff you use tweezers for, which is shockingly a lot. And honestly, that really gets me by for a lot of stuff. The first drawer is mostly junk, like just miscellaneous stuff. I'm not particularly proud of that. And then I really need to reorg the rest of this. But little thing like Judd's toenail clippers, or having certain vice grips that I always know I've got, little electronics tools. This has been it's great. Okay, what I miss here in the comments. Take a pic and post on your website. Okay, yeah, or I'm inclined to want to give me a chance to redo them, Greg. And I've got a intern starting next week, and that may be a good thing for him to start working on it too. I don't know if we can do autoplay because that has to do with an embedding. And I actually hate autoplay. In fairness, I find it quite obnoxious. Yeah, tell you what, Greg, give me 2, 3, 4 weeks. Let me see what happens out there, and hit me back up to make me follow up on that, because I am happy to share and learn. And if you haven't watched it, watch Jay Pearson's video. Let me go find it so you can see Jay Pearson. Here we go. Perfect. By the way, if you guys didn't know this or realize it, the best way to search NYC CNC is just go to google.com and type NYC CNC and then search for what you want to find. We have a search on NYC CNC, but Google search is the best. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. We also heard a really good email from a guy, or forum post, Juan, who just said that he had his review and he got a big promotion, and a lot of it was just due to the what he's learned from us and from Grimsmo. And I think this sense of community and paying it forward and pushing each other and sharing resources. And that's it's really cool, folks. I really appreciate that. So I am going to actually sign off. I was supposed to be home in 3 minutes. It's not going to happen, but we'll get there close enough to it is. But hey, folks, as always, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon or through the NYC site. Email us if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll post a date for a June live chat here in the next week or two. Take care.